So, a lot of us former special ed students experienced problems in the special ed system, including me. So I wrote a blog about it, which is iwasinspecialed.blogspot.com, which I'll link below. I use a pseudonym, and I'm not even going to show my face. So I attended in New York City public schools and was in special ed full-time since kindergarten until 10th grade due to specific learning disability. This was my disability category. The reason I was put in special ed, according to my mom, is because I didn't follow directions. They had to tell me 10 times to open the book before I opened the book. I was weak, and they thought I'd never be able to write, which I did have handwriting problems. The school said it was easier to work with me in special ed. So, in 6th grade, the school mistakenly put me in a class for children with multiple disabilities. All those children had medical issues and intellectual disabilities, and now they're in the 6th to 8th grade, but they were doing 2nd grade work. And my mom looked at my homework and saw it was the same stuff from 2nd grade. And when the teacher was teaching tally marks, I raised my hand and said, I learned that in 2nd grade. And I explained what tally marks were. So the school realized this mistake, and in 2 months, since the beginning of the school year, in 2 months, they put me in a different class for special ed kids, but those kids were learning the state curriculum, learning grade level work. And the school also assigned me a full-time 1-to-1 para. And the reason why they assigned the para is unclear, let alone a full-time para. So, in 9th grade, when I started high school, the para helped because I refused to wear deodorant and stuff, because I had some emotional issues. But, that issue was resolved within 6 months. So, and in 10th grade, they finally put me in general ed for the first time, but I still had a full-time para. I didn't want and need a para. But I was thinking I was in general ed for the first time, and I had to prove to them that I can be in general ed. So towards the end of the year, I asked my mom to remove the para. Hopefully the para would be removed next year. And and during the summer, I asked her every day to remove the para, because she kind of joked about this request. So in response, during the summer, I would ask her every day to remove the para. So, my mom didn't know how to remove the para. I was thinking, so, I read online a parent's guide to special education, thinking how to remove the para. They said you had to write a letter to the district or district representative, I don't remember. So I asked my mom to write a letter to the school asking them to remove the para. And, and she did that a few times, and my dad wrote a letter a few times. But then the school called my mom and asked, is it me who wants the para removed, or is it her who wants the para removed? And my mom unfortunately answered honestly that I harassed her all summer, for the para to be removed. So, this was during the beginning of my junior year. And, so I did go to the office and tell the school every day to remove the para, until one day they called me into an office and said, we're not terminating your services. This is verbatim. So I went back to class immediately and stopped telling them. So, I protested having a para by refusing to do work. Now, this is why I failed a few classes, but thankfully I graduated during the summer on time. I had to take summer school. And, I refused to talk to the para, but, the para insisted I talk to her. So, there are days where the para was absent and I didn't have a substitute, and I did fine. And I was so much happier not having someone breathe down my neck all the time, having somebody follow me to class. So, but those were when the paras were absent. And there was another time, when I thought the para was absent, and because she didn't, but she didn't see me in my first and second period classes, so, or third period class, or for whatever reason, because probably I came late. So, when I was in math class, and she comes in and she asks, where was I? I refused to talk to her or answer her. She asked if I was in my classes. I refused to answer her because, it's none of her business. I don't want a para. So, during my senior year, the principal was observing my computer class. If you attended NYC schools, of course, you'll know if the drill, like if somebody comes to observe, then you gotta behave yourself and all that. So, we were, this was for an English class, but, we were in the computer 2 times a week for a reading software. So, and when I would finish, I would, go look up other stuff on the computer. But since the principal came in, I was behaving myself. I didn't look up other stuff. I only did the software. Even if I was finished, I was still on this software. So, So I did behave during that period. Well, I always behave during that time during this class. So, but I put on like an act, like we do, when somebody comes in and observes. Like I said, I only did the software. So, the principal saw my para wasn't sitting next to me, and and asked the para, why aren't you sitting next to her? Like, this was ridiculous. I was doing fine on my own, obviously, and I was 18 years old. And so, like, why do I need someone sitting next to me? And there was another time I was 18. The school year was almost over, and my last class teacher was absent. And I decided to go home, because we're allowed to go home if the last class teacher was absent. My para just happened to be in the bathroom. So the next day I come to school, and my friends started asking me, where were you? Miss Blah 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 was looking for you. And then my para told me I was supposed to wait for her to come back to tell her I was leaving, because she was responsible for me and would be in trouble if something happened to me. Like, this was ridiculous. I'm 18 and an adult already, and the school year is almost over. Like, why do my friends get to leave and I had to tell my babysitter before leaving? Like, and again, I was more than capable of being on my own, yet the school ignored my repeated request to remove the para. And so, like, well, why did they keep the para when I didn't need it? And I said during my sophomore year, towards the end, I asked my mom to remove the para. And my mom brought it up during the IEP meeting, which we had at the end of the year. And one of the members of the IEP team, who was titled Special Education Teacher Related Service Provider, she said, the para is there to protect her in case she says something inappropriate. Well, that never happened. But, like, what kind of logic is that? Like, this is high school. Kids say inappropriate things all the time. But, this is said, and I quoted verbatim, the para is there to protect her in case she says something inappropriate. And, like, I was more than capable of being on my own. I honestly believe they kept the para to get funding, or so the para could have a student so she won't lose her job, or whatever. But, you know, or so they could protect me, I guess. Like everyone wanted to protect me. They were afraid of me being bullied or whatever. But, I'll talk about that. So when I started high school, they gave me a survey. Now, they had me fill out a checklist to see what I was interested in as part of transition. Transition is preparing for life after high school, for those who don't know. Like, there's a page that's on the back of the IEP that says how many credits you earned. Are you working towards a Regents diploma or a local diploma? Or an IEP diploma. Well, IEP diploma, now they call it a skills achievement credential. And all that. That's for kids taking the alternate assessments. And they say how many credits you earned and all that. And your goals relating to employment and independent living. So, well, they had me fill out a survey to see what I was interested in and all that. I just started high school. If 80% of college students change their major, how am I supposed to know what I want to do with my life? Yet a year later, they didn't listen to me about my desires to be independent or not to have someone breathe down my neck. And towards the end of the school year, I said about the IEP meeting, I had during my sophomore year, right before the meeting. The same woman who said, the para is there to protect her in case she says something inappropriate. And, she had me fill out a questionnaire. What do I want to be? What do I want to do after high school? I just said I wanted to get a job, and she says that's too vague. So I just wrote down I wanted to be a lawyer. So I just made it up. How am I supposed to decide already what I want to be? Yet they won't listen to me about my services. What kind of sense does that make? Well, in 6th grade, my mom says they wanted to put me in special ed, but they were afraid that I was gonna, that kids were gonna bully me there. They wanted to put me in general ed, but they were afraid that kids were gonna bully me there. And you heard it correctly. The school said that they wanted to put me in general ed, but were afraid. The school, not we. Meaning my mom was not involved in the decisions, because my mom didn't really care what the school was doing to me. Well, I did call, some legal offices to see what can I do to have my para removed. Some government offices. The typical drill. I'll transfer you to this number. And then again, I'll transfer you to this number. Again, I'll transfer you to this number. When I reached my final destination, though, they wouldn't help me at all. They just offered to call the school and to tell them about it. And, they were no help at all. Yeah. Well, my mom could have set up an IEP meeting during my junior year and demand they remove the para. Well, why didn't she do that? I didn't know she was supposed to do that, but she should have known this. So in 6th grade, I was also in adaptive physical education. Well, this is a modified gym for special ed students. They work on motor skills and stuff. Well, most of my class during 6th grade, they were in regular gym playing sports. I was just learning how to catch a ball. I read my IEP goal, and it said, Anna will be able to catch a medium-sized ball with both hands. Anna will be able to catch a medium-sized ball with both hands. Well, I would catch a ball, but I would catch it with one hand. Cool that I was able to do that. But the gym teacher wanted me to do it with both hands. Fortunately, I was never sporty or athletically inclined and all that, but still though, most of my class was in regular gym playing sports, and I was in special ed learning to catch a ball. So, and I'm still mad, that the school wouldn't remove the para. And my mom never apologized, my dad never apologized. He knew I wanted the para removed, yet wouldn't remove the para. Well, he was at work most of the time, so this is something my mom should have done. My dad could have done it when he could have taken a day off work for the IEP meeting and demanded they remove the para. Yes. Well, because my mom didn't do it. And, my dad kind of supported the idea. Because, when I was in 8th grade, I said I wanted to be in general ed. But, my dad spoke to the teacher about it. The teacher talked about a collaborative team teaching class, but never went further than that. Well, that's my story. Thanks.